Welcome to the Egg Whisperer Show, a podcast exclusively designed to create more reproductive health awareness and discuss your fertility preservation options. Here is your host, the Harvard-educated fertility specialist, Dr. Amy.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Egg Whisperer Show. The topic of tonight's show is top reasons you're having a hard time getting pregnant. I spend much of my day staring at pregnancy tests. It is the most exciting thing to see a positive pregnancy test for the very first time. But it's extremely frustrating, and it doesn't matter if it's one test, if it's 12 tests, if it's 24 tests. Each test really takes a toll on your emotions, on your psyche. So I just thought I'd dedicate this show tonight to teaching everybody a little bit about what might cause people to have a harder time getting pregnant. But before I start, I just want everyone to do what I tell my patients to do, is actively think of a really beautiful place, a happy place right now, okay? Because when you're going through something really stressful, it's really important to have something mental that you can go to immediately. And it doesn't matter if this is something that you use when you're trying to get pregnant or in other areas of your life, if there's relationship stress or work stress. If you could just take a moment, imagine someplace, think of the sky, think of the water in front of you, think of the sand, how it feels in your toes, then maybe something that's a little bit difficult to deal with may not be as bad. Okay, so on to fertility news this week, and it has to do with things that might make it a little bit harder to get pregnant, and that is this show, Adam Ruins Everything. And I saw these previews this week that were running about egg freezing and about how women can really have babies after 35. And I just thought that this was a great opportunity for me to talk about the show because it is so true. Absolutely, women can have babies after 35. And the media is not telling people that they can't. What doctors like me are trying to teach people about is how to track your levels to see if you're one of those women who can actually have a baby after 35. So you wouldn't know unless you got your levels checked. So if you've watched this show before, you've probably heard me say things like, want to have a baby? Get your levels checked. Had a baby? Get your levels checked. On birth control pills? Get your levels checked. Just had a baby at your postpartum visit? Get your levels checked. So then you know how to plan your future family. So no one's trying to tell women that they can't have a baby after 35. But it would be unfair to tell women that there is help for women who have run out of eggs, because there isn't, unless you want to use a donor egg. And science has not taken us so far where we can help a woman who's run out of eggs get more eggs. So as long as you're planning your future family, please know that there are levels that you can check to guide you as far as what your fertility levels are. You should never be standing at an egg cliff wondering how you got there. The other thing that was all over the news is about how ovarian tissue freezing might actually, well, this is what the media was saying about it, may actually be a better option than egg freezing for women. But it's not true. Ovarian freezing is still very much experimental. What the researchers did, and these are top-notch scientists at the forefront of this technology, they basically reviewed the literature and talked about how the first ovarian tissue freezing pregnancy was reported in the year 2000. They talked about over 300 cases of ovarian tissue freezing and the pregnancy rate. So I actually contacted one of my friends in New York and I said, hey, is this something that I could do? Could I remove one ovary at 41 and then have it replaced at, let's say, 50 so that I would never have menopause or need hormone replacement therapy? We're not there yet. Although if you read the Time magazine article and the other articles on ovarian tissue freezing, you would think that we have now discovered a way to preserve a woman's fertility, and it's better than egg freezing where you don't have to take shots. Well, to have any ovary tissue removed, it requires a surgery. To have the tissue replaced, it requires a surgery. And if you look at the details of the article, and we'll post it up below the video tonight, what you'll see is that many women actually needed several surgeries to even put the tissue back. So while it sounds great, and it's something that I would even do myself, if, let's say, the ovarian tissue could last several years. But if you look at the average lifespan of that tissue and how long it secreted hormones for, it looks like the average length was anywhere from maybe 2 years to 144 months. Okay, another really crazy thing that was in the news. And I said to myself, well, it's kind of timely that this article was published. And it was on how your mac and cheese could hurt your fertility chances. So what researchers found was that the cheese, the powdered cheese, contains the same plastic elements called phthalates, also known as plasticizers, that is found in not this plastic, no, it has my Egg Whisperer logo, not this plastic water container because it's BPA free, but substances like that can actually cause harm to egg and sperm cells. So imagine this, we all feel like there's some fertility epidemic out there. And it's true, perhaps there are chemicals that we're ingesting long-term that are affecting our egg and sperm health. And we're only now learning more and more about how these chemicals actually disrupt the hormones in our body. So I came up with, well, here's the article, and you can read more about it if you're interested. And of course, the macaroni makers are saying that the amount of this substance is so low that it meets safety standards. I totally get that. But when you're working hard to get pregnant, there are certainly things that you can do to avoid those kinds of exposures to hopefully improve your egg and sperm health. Obviously, what I'm saying isn't, let's say, proven by any studies, but definitely it's something that I want my patients to know about. So there's a really nice list, and we'll post a link for things that you should avoid if, let's say, you're trying to get pregnant. And some of the things are avoid microwaving food in plastic containers, stay away from plastic bottles, always store food in glass, stainless steel, or ceramic containers. The other thing is take your shoes off when you enter your home because the dust at the bottom of your shoes can contain these substances too. Keep your carpets and windowsills clean. Look for products from companies and manufacturers who can verify that their products are free of this substance. The other thing that you can do is go to this website for your products. So let's say your beauty products, your shampoos, there's a website that you can actually put in the name of the product that you're using, whether it's a mascara, and it'll tell you what it contains. And that website is ewg.org. So that's something that you can consider looking at as you're trying to get pregnant to see if there's anything else that you can do to improve your chances. Because maybe some things that you're doing you can change, and that might make things a little bit better. So one thing that might be making it more difficult is that you're not exercising enough. I hear this from a lot of patients. They say that they read online that if they exercise, it actually hurts their chances for pregnancy. And they were told that they shouldn't exercise. Well, that's actually not true. The CDC and American College of OBGYN, they both recommend exercise in amounts of 150 minutes per week. So that's not being sedentary. That is being active. That's 30 minutes, 5 days a week. It doesn't mean you have to be exercising so vigorously like you're running away from a lion. That's what I tell my patients. So when you're trying to get pregnant, do more fertile exercises. Do things where your body feels more relaxed and not like it's running away from a large animal and in a fight or flight mode so that your body will accept an embryo. So certainly if you're an exercise enthusiast, you could talk to your doctor first and make sure that the exercises are cleared by your doctor. And if you're more sedentary, talk to a doctor, a fitness trainer, about what kind of changes you want to make in your life. And the other thing goes with food. There's so much conflicting information about food, what to eat, when to eat. Should you go gluten-free, soy-free? There's so many different diets out there. Avoid milk, avoid dairy, avoid white sugar. Like, what do you do? So one thing that I tell my patients to do is work with an expert. Work with someone like Judy. She does online consults. She'll talk to you over the phone no matter where you live, review what your situation is, whether you have endometriosis or PCOS, and then she'll make a plan just for you. Okay, this is a banana. So one thing that makes it harder to get pregnant is if your fallopian tubes are blocked. So why do I have a banana up on the screen? I know, you hear it over and over again that the guy that you're sleeping with, you're the only guy or the only girl or guy that he's ever been with, right? And so you shouldn't wear condoms anymore. Well, HPV virus is the virus that can cause cervical cancer. It can cause changes on the cervix that can affect the integrity of the cervix if a portion of the cervix has to be removed if you have precancerous changes. So that's why we do the pap smear. I have patients that tell me all the time, I ask them, are your fallopian tubes open? And they said, I have a normal pap smear. And I say, well, they're actually not connected. But if you think about it, if you've been exposed to a sexually transmitted infection like HPV, you could put yourself at risk for preterm labor and delivery. But if you've been exposed to something like that, you might have been exposed to something else that could have blocked your fallopian tubes. So what I recommend is that before you're even trying to get pregnant, to always consider wearing a condom. So I tell people, please pass on your yummy chocolate edibles before you go to bed if you're trying to get pregnant. I know, all your friends are doing it. They all got pregnant very easily. But if you're not, especially if you're trying to get pregnant and you're having a hard time, I assure you that there is enough data to suggest that THC and cannabinoids can affect the motility of the fallopian tube and the receptors in the lining of the uterus, so that embryo implantation just might be harder and it might not happen as quickly as you would want. You've heard me say it before, egg killers and sperm killers. We know that nicotine can affect the DNA in the egg and the sperm cells, and it can also affect a woman's fertility such that she could go potentially into menopause earlier, and we don't want that. So one of the biggest myths about fertility and having a hard time getting pregnant is that your birth control pills are causing the problem. I hear it time and time again. Women who stop their birth control pills, let's say after 15 years, and now that they want to have a baby, they say, I stopped my pills, my periods haven't started, it must be the birth control pills. Well, it's not the birth control pills. What the birth control pills do is mask infertility. They make it difficult to find out if you've run out of eggs, because you can't see the normal signs that many people can see, and that would be having irregular periods. So what I tell people is if you're on birth control pills for long periods of time, every year when you check in with your OBGYN, be sure to get your levels checked and see how they're trending. And ask yourself, is this a good time to do a fertility preservation procedure? Am I ready to start a family? What's going on with my life? And then take your next pack of pills. But birth control pills do not hurt your fertility. They'll make it harder to get pregnant the longer you wait to get pregnant, but they can certainly help things like reduce endometriosis and prevent fibroids from growing in specific situations. Okay, so another thing that makes it harder to get pregnant, you've seen this over and over and over again, is this picture of a clock, the biological clock. So, there are certainly so many women that can get pregnant over 35, over 37, over 40. I mean, I have helped women who come to me at 37, have a baby naturally at 37 or with very little help from me, then do it again at 39. But certainly that's not everyone's story. So if I have a patient who, let's say, comes to me at 39 years old and says she wants 3 kids, I look at her and I said, let's do it. But to have 3 kids starting at the age of 39, it would be really hard to do it without a fertility preservation procedure. So there are things that we can do now to freeze eggs, freeze sperm, make embryos. It kind of depends on what your situation is and what's best for you. And you can do those things so that when you're 42, and that's not old by any means, wanting your 3rd child, your 2nd child, you can just go to your fertility doctor and then be very happy that you made a decision to be so proactive. We talk a lot about stress and sleep and circadian rhythms, and there is a nice study showing how the circadian rhythm can definitely affect your fertility. And we'll add the link up so you can read it at your leisure as well. So when it comes to sleep, what we found is that people who work night shifts might have a harder time sleeping. I ask patients a lot of times to take melatonin. So melatonin is good for egg health. It's shown to be a very potent antioxidant and can help women who have a diagnosis of decreased ovarian reserve or low egg quality. But I think in some patients who are working swing shift, perhaps taking melatonin may help. Ask your doctor. The recommendations that I'm making are just the recommendations that I make to my patients, but you can research these things, look at the studies that we're posting, and take them back to your doctor to see if there's a role for you to be doing these things as well. So we talked about not enough exercise earlier in the show as being something that can make it harder to get pregnant. But what about too much exercise? Here in California, it's not unusual. I have friends that say, I went to the gym this morning, and now I'm going back to the gym tonight. I did my abs in the morning, I'm doing my cardio at night. Well, being fit and healthy is incredibly good for the heart and the soul, right? I mean, it makes people feel good, increases energy levels, but there might be a point where it's just too much. So how would you know? Well, I'll tell you. You can calculate your BMI, and if your BMI is over 19, that's considered the fertile zone. But if your BMI is under 19, you may experience symptoms of something called hypothalamic amenorrhea, also known as exercise-induced amenorrhea, basically when you stop ovulating. So think about this. You know those Olympians, the gymnasts? With that kind of routine, you can imagine that they won't get their periods. About 20% of them, once they stop exercising at that rate of intensity, you would think that all of them would start menstruating again and be able to ovulate. But for some of them, 20%, their ovulation doesn't come back. So I have patients who are exercise enthusiasts, and I tell them, oh yeah, I could tell you to gain 10 pounds and maybe your periods would come back, but at the same time, they may not. And their fertility pills, sometimes it also requires shots because of how the brain talks to the ovary to help a woman with exercise-induced ovulation issues ovulate. But if you're not having your period, don't think that there isn't something that we can do. You might be a fertility pill away from your next ovulation and hopefully future pregnancy. So this is funny. It's really a thing. Snowballs. Seriously, snowballs. So I used to have shot glasses, seriously, that said, don't cook your balls. A company sent them to me. I had them up on my desk and I'd give them away to guys who came to my office. It's no wonder men don't come to my office anymore with their wives. No, they really do. They totally do. Because I'm a good time. It's really fun. Jokes every day, starting at 8 a.m. in the morning until 6 p.m. at night. So one of the things that could potentially make it harder to get pregnant is if you have a job that, let's say, requires you to wear heavy clothing. So let's say you're a fireman or you're working construction. Or you're working a line, let's say for PG&E or something like that. So you're wearing lots and lots of clothing. And so there's a reason why the testicles are outside the body and the scrotum. And there's a reason why the ovaries are inside the body, in your pelvis. So a guy's testicles, if they're exposed to a shift in temperature of even 1 to 2 degrees, that can affect the sperm morphology. And that means the shape. So if a sperm cell, the shape of the head, isn't normally shaped, it's going to have a really hard time penetrating and fertilizing an egg. So I tell people, look, if you're one of those guys that runs really, really hot, you can seriously just get some snowballs. It's a gel pack. You put it on the inside of your underwear, let it thaw, and then just throw it away. Maybe have a second one. I think it comes with 2 gel packs because I have patients that actually do this. And I'm sure that there's a do-it-yourself version at home, but I don't know that I would necessarily recommend that. But this is a way to keep your testicles nice and cool. Guys, you stay out of the hot tub. Wives or female partners, get into the hot tub. Guys, massage, massage, massage. And then once pregnant, you can kind of switch, but not really. So another thing to talk about is sperm health as it relates to aging. This is a study that's been all over about how sperm age matters. It actually matters how old a guy is. And so you've probably seen some of my egg freezing parties. I've done webinars. We've done some shows about egg freezing. And one of the messages that I give people is this. If you're going to thaw your precious eggs after an egg freeze, be sure to look at everything related to the sperm. And that includes not only the sperm quality, but also the sperm DNA. Because there are epigenetic changes that you can see that are influenced on the sperm environment. So if a guy's, let's say, overweight, he can lose weight, and that improves his sperm quality. It isn't the same thing for women. So for us, our fertility isn't necessarily skin deep the way it is for guys. But for guys, their sperm is a window into their health. So take time to put your sperm through a sperm fitness challenge before trying to get pregnant, kind of like what women do. I mean, we take prenatals. There's no reason why a guy can't take supplements and vitamins too, get his sperm checked, and then see and make sure that his sperm is in the fittest, most, robust shape possible. I can assure you that most female fertility doctors, if married to a man or partnered with a guy, we're going to check our partner's sperm before we're trying to get pregnant. And that's so you don't have to spend month after month after month not knowing, wondering if there's something else you could be doing better. so that you don't have to be staring at that negative pregnancy test, hoping and wishing that it's going to turn positive. So another thing that you probably heard your neighbor say, or you tell your mom you're trying to get pregnant, she's like, "Oh honey, just relax." Well, that's super annoying. But if you're feeling stressed, I can't do a test to quantify how stressed you are. But if you're stressed, you're stressed. So talk to a therapist, go to a marriage counselor, see an acupuncturist, join a group through Resolve. You can go to resolve.org, find a group in your area, and talk to other people that are going through exactly what you're going through, because you're certainly not alone. So another thing that can make it more difficult to get pregnant is if the embryo transport system is blocked. Many of you probably don't know this, but the first IVF pregnancy was actually in a fallopian tube. It was. It was diagnosed at 13 weeks of pregnancy and removed, and then that same woman got pregnant again and delivered the first IVF baby. So it's really important to make sure the fallopian tubes are open. I always make sure that I know what's going on with my patients' fallopian tubes even before IVF, because as the lessons were learned back in the day with the first IVF cycle, even when you're putting an embryo inside a uterus during an embryo transfer, that embryo can still float up into the fallopian tube. If the fallopian tube is blocked, and so if the embryo is in the fallopian tube, the embryo can actually travel down the fallopian tube. The fallopian tube will move it back into the uterus. But if the fallopian tube is blocked and the embryo goes here and it goes here, then the fallopian tube will be like, "Sorry, embryo, I can't push you back in the uterus." And then the embryo gets stuck in the fallopian tube and there's nothing that you can do at that point. So things that can block fallopian tubes are endometriosis, pelvic surgery. Let's say you had an appendectomy and a severe pelvic abscess that required surgery, hospitalization, and IV antibiotics. All of those things together can affect the fallopian tubes. And I think I mentioned endometriosis. So there are things that we can do for patients like that. But you can also have a hysterosalpingogram. And a hysterosalpingogram will allow you to look at the detailed structure of the fallopian tubes to see if there's anything else that you can do before you consider IVF. So as always, it's super important to ask questions. Go to a doctor, ask why. Ask why again. If you were a fertility patient even 6 months ago and walked away from treatment for whatever reason, I know it's hard, but things are always changing. There's so many tests, even today, that I couldn't do 6 months ago. There's advanced sperm testing that we can do now. There's fertility gene testing that we can do on women. I'm certain that there's going to be fertility gene testing that we can do on men as well. So if you take a moment, take 10%, let's say, of what you were going to spend on treatment, and spend that time on diagnostic testing to find out why is it so hard for you to get pregnant, then hopefully whatever you choose to do next, it will be geared right for what your diagnosis dictates is necessary for you to do. So what I want to do is open it up for questions, see if we have any questions tonight. I think we have a couple questions that were emailed, and we'll pull them up right now, and I'll be happy to answer them for the people who sent them in. So the first question is, what about pregnancy with IUI? Paula, will you read me the rest of it?
Yeah, at age 38. I did one at 36, and it failed miserably, and I am now $10,000 poorer. I used donor sperm.
Yeah, so donor sperm is not as potent as fresh sperm. So the pregnancy rates are less than 10%. So my approach for patients, especially patients in their 30s, especially over 35, is to make sure that the egg quality is such that we shouldn't start considering IVF. But the other thing that you can do is a more aggressive ovulation induction where you're helping a patient ovulate 2 eggs, and in certain situations, maybe 3 is appropriate. And then you can consider how you time the IUI and consider doing a double IUI. So a double IUI involves using 2 vials separated by approximately 24 hours or so. Let's say today's Wednesday, I take the trigger shot tonight, then I'll do 1 IUI on Thursday and 1 IUI on Friday, and hopefully that will maximize my chances. And then make sure you've checked your fallopian tubes, you've looked at your fertility levels, and you can even send a vial of sperm off to be tested to make sure that it actually has what you want to give you the highest chance for pregnancy. And when I say tested, you can look at the epigenetics of a sperm vial also before you choose that vial for IUI. So the next question is a woman who's 48 years old, mother of a 16-year-old and a 12-year-old, saying that her egg count is really low and wondering if it's possible for her to get pregnant. And I get these questions all the time. I mean, women see these stories about, famous celebrities like Janet Jackson and how she got pregnant at 50 and had a baby. And so it kind of reignites this falsehood that it is something that we can do naturally. But what I tell patients is this: look, I want you to be the first 48-year-old to get pregnant with her own eggs and have a healthy baby in my practice. I want that for everyone. But certainly the chances that a 48-year-old could get pregnant and deliver a healthy baby with her own eggs is probably 1% or less. Sometimes I say 1% and patients say, so there's a chance? I just don't want to be that person to say, no, there's no chance, because certainly I'm a super positive person and I want everyone to succeed. But when it comes to pregnancy, especially over 45, the majority of women are using eggs from an egg donor or donated embryos. There's so many other ways of having a family. And so those are kind of the ways that I counsel my patients to consider. So Paula, do we have any callers tonight?
We do not have a caller, but we do have a Facebook question.
Okay.
If you are open for that.
Yes, go for it.
Okay. When taking birth control pills and stopping, it can make it harder to get pregnant. But does all birth control do that?
Mm-hmm. So that's a really good question. So birth control pills and stopping it birth control pills prevent you from getting pregnant. But when you stop it, your body should just kick right into ovulation mode. So if you're not ovulating and having regular cycles after you've stopped birth control pills, there's a reason why. You can get your levels checked, like the day 3 FSH, estradiol, AMH. It could be a thyroid problem. There could be a number of reasons like PCOS, hypothalamic amenorrhea, or decreased ovarian reserve, or primary ovarian insufficiency. So without doing a simple blood test, you would have really no idea exactly what's going on. But know that the birth control pills didn't necessarily cause it. It just made it harder to diagnose. And you might have diagnosed it later when your eggs were viable. You might have had the opportunity to do something. So that's why I counsel people, and I'm trying to shout at the top of my lungs, get your levels checked. Any other questions?
Mm-hmm. The same person also is asking something I've been curious about. Mm-hmm. Do you recommend that the younger generation get the HPV vaccine around 11 or 12 years old, as we're seeing all those ads on TV about?
I think when it comes to stuff like that, it's extremely personal. Cervical cancer certainly affects a lot of people, and cervical cancer deaths are preventable. I've definitely seen women in their early 30s succumb and die to such a horrible disease. And if I had the ability to prevent it with the HPV vaccine, I would. But knowing whether it's right for your child, your son, or your daughter, it's not something that I feel personally should be mandated by, let's say, the government, but something that every family would know if it's right for their child.
Thank you.
Yeah. But along those lines, though, there is some stuff out there about how it could cause primary ovarian insufficiency. You can actually see those articles kind of going around, and sometimes I read them. But so far, to date, I haven't seen anything that I really think that puts stock into that claim.
Wonderful. And that's all the questions on Facebook.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you everyone for watching tonight. Have a great night.
Thank you so much for listening and making the Egg Whisperer Show a part of your weekly routine. To find show notes and a full transcript for this episode, visit dramy.org and look under the blog tab. While you're there, you can find a link for the Egg Whisperer newsletter, which keeps you in the know about fertility news. You can also find Dr. Amy and the Egg Whisperer Show on YouTube, Instagram, or Facebook. If you'd like to learn even more, Dr. Amy offers classes at the Egg Whisperer School, eggwhispererschool.com, or you can request a consultation on dramy.org. Thank you so much for tuning in and for sharing the Egg Whisperer Show with others. Keep sparkling and have a great day.